Few moments in history have shaped the future of the world as decisively as the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. In one fateful day, Napoleon Bonaparte's ambition to dominate Europe came crashing down under the combined forces of Britain, Prussia, and their allies. The defeat at Waterloo ended his rule, exiled him for life, and restored the old European order. But what if history had taken a different turn? What if Napoleon had won that battle? How would the course of Europe, and the world, have changed? Let us dive into the 5 major ways a French victory at Waterloo could have reshaped history. You might find that Napoleon's lost chance could have meant a world unlike anything we know today. Napoleon restores his empire and consolidates power in France. If Napoleon had won at Waterloo, his immediate priority would have been to stabilize France and reassert his power across Europe. At the time of his return from exile on Elba, Napoleon's hold over France was fragile. He reclaimed the throne largely on his personal legend and the loyalty of soldiers, but many political factions inside France remained divided. A victory at Waterloo would have silenced his domestic opponents. The Bourbon monarchy, which had been restored after his first abdication, would have seemed weak and irrelevant. Napoleon's victory would have allowed him to crush royalist resistance and revolutionary factions alike, uniting France under his leadership once more. With his military genius confirmed yet again, Napoleon would have likely positioned himself not just as a conqueror, but as a peacemaker within France. He might have offered reforms to gain the support of liberals and moderates, combining his authoritarian rule with popular policies to strengthen his hold on power. And here is a thought worth considering. Sometimes, nothing unites a divided nation like a victorious leader returning from the edge of defeat. For France, Napoleon's triumph could have meant a new era of centralized power under his absolute control. Britain and Prussia forced into a reluctant peace at Waterloo, Napoleon faced a coalition determined to crush him for good. But if he had defeated Wellington's Anglo-Dutch army and Blue Chair's Prussians, the entire balance of power in Europe would have shifted overnight. A victorious Napoleon would not have stopped at the battlefield. He would have pursued the retreating allies, pressing his advantage before they could regroup. Britain, having suffered a major defeat, might have been forced to rethink its position. Though Britain's navy remained dominant, a resurgent France under Napoleon would have made any new invasion of the continent costly and uncertain. With public pressure mounting at home, and the financial strain of war growing heavier, Britain could have been drawn into negotiating a peace settlement. Prussia, reeling from defeat, would have faced the risk of French armies marching into its heartland. Already weakened by previous wars, Prussia might have been forced to sue for peace or risk total collapse. Here is an unsettling possibility. With Britain and Prussia both sidelined or forced into peace, Napoleon could have dismantled the coalition against him. Europe might have been forced to accept, however reluctantly, the reality of a restored Napoleonic empire. The reshaping of the European political order. French victory at Waterloo would not have simply restored Napoleon's power. It would have rewritten the political map of Europe. Napoleon had a long history of placing his family members and loyal allies on the thrones of conquered nations. After Waterloo, he would have had the chance to revive this system across the continent. The Bourbon monarchy in Spain, restored after Napoleon's earlier defeat, could have been removed once again, replaced by a French ally or puppet ruler. The Italian kingdoms, where Napoleon had strong influence before, might have fallen back under French control. The Confederation of the Rhine, which Napoleon created as a buffer against Austria and Prussia, could have been revived to protect France's eastern borders. Moreover, Austria and Russia, both major players in the coalition, would have faced a crucial choice: risk open war with a victorious Napoleon or negotiate a new balance of power. Either way, Europe's future would have been reshaped not by conservative monarchies, but by the hand of a French emperor who rewrote the rules. And here is a fascinating possibility. The Congress of Vienna, which aimed to restore the old order after Napoleon's fall, would have become meaningless. Instead, a new order built on Napoleonic principles could have defined the 19th century. The spread of revolutionary ideals under imperial rule. Napoleon was a conqueror, but he also carried with him the ideas of the French Revolution: nationalism, legal equality, meritocracy, and secular governance. Even as an emperor, he implemented reforms that broke the grip of aristocracy and religious authority in many parts of Europe. If Napoleon had won at Waterloo, his influence would have extended these revolutionary ideals across more territories. The Napoleonic Code, with its emphasis on civil law, property rights, and legal equality, could have become the standard in many European nations. Old feudal systems might have collapsed under the weight of Napoleonic reform, changing the social structure of Europe for good. At the same time, Napoleon's promotion of nationalism could have reshaped the map beyond his own empire. Movements for national unity in Germany and Italy might have been fueled by his example or suppressed by his authority, creating a very different timeline for those nations. Here is a compelling angle. Napoleon's vision was not purely military, it was deeply political. Victory at Waterloo might have allowed him to spread revolutionary change under the banner of empire, blending reform with conquest in a way Europe had never seen before, a delayed or altered path to modern Europe. One of the most profound consequences of Napoleon's defeat was the preservation of conservative monarchies and the delay of liberal revolutions across Europe. The victory of the coalition at Waterloo led to a century of monarchist rule, punctuated by uprisings and gradual change. But if Napoleon had won, this timeline might have changed entirely. The conservative order imposed by the Congress of Vienna could have collapsed. Revolutions in Europe, like those in 1830, 1848, and later, might have happened earlier or taken different forms. Republicanism and nationalism, fueled by Napoleonic success, could have swept through Europe decades sooner. Moreover, the balance of colonial power might have shifted. Britain's global dominance, secured in part by Napoleon's defeat, could have been challenged by a resurgent France. The rivalry between the two powers might have intensified, reshaping the map of Africa, Asia, and the Americas. And here is a reflection to leave you thinking. History is not a straight line but a web of possible paths. A single victory at Waterloo might have delayed the rise of British imperialism, reshaped colonial history, and set Europe on a different road toward modernity. Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo ended an era. But had the battle gone the other way, it could have opened a future filled with new empires, different alliances, and a reshaped political order. A victorious Napoleon might have restored his empire, forced his enemies into uneasy peace, redrawn Europe's borders, spread revolutionary ideals under imperial control, and shifted the course of global power. Yet, with every possibility comes risk. Napoleon's ambitions often outpaced his resources. Holding a fractured Europe together under one banner, even with a victory at Waterloo, would have required more than military genius. Could Napoleon have built a lasting peace, or would Europe have plunged into endless wars of resistance and rebellion? The answer remains one of history's greatest what-ifs. One fact is clear. The outcome of Waterloo did not just change the fate of one man. It changed the fate of a continent and, eventually, the world. If you enjoyed this deep dive into alternate history, make sure to watch our next video on why the British Empire was the most powerful in history. The answer could surprise you. See you there.